AOC had to do a quick rush. She had to run and defend Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on the lack of policy towards Gaza. So before we actually talk about what AOC had to say, because I think it's only important that we do bring this up, let's go ahead and talk about this. Heinous. Children among 100 killed by Israeli bombing of Gaza school just hours before U.S. weapons approval. So, just want to let you all know this. There's only so much of this article I can show. Just hours after the Biden administration Friday announced approval of $3.5 billion in military funds for Israel and shipments for new weaponry, an Israeli bombing of its school-turned-shelter in Gaza has killed 100 people or more, including scores of civilian men, women, and children, in what's been described as a bloody massacre. That struck during morning prayers, leaving body parts scattered in pieces and healthcare workers overwhelmed with the dead and wounded. The Palestinian Authority's government in the occupied West Bank released a statement Saturday describing the attack on the Al-Tabin school in Gaza City as a heinous, bloody massacre that represents the peak of terrorism and criminality by the Israeli government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Committing these massacres confirms beyond a shadow of a doubt its efforts to exterminate our people through the policy of cumulative killing and mass massacre that make living consciences tremble, said the Palestinian Authority. Footage taken by volunteers working alongside Palestinian medical units in Gaza City showed wounded small children and adults being taken to local hospitals, as well as scenes of carnage from the scene of the bombing. But hey, AOC, let's talk about policy, shall we? Take it away.
There are some who are suggesting that the reason why the vice president didn't pick Governor Shapiro is because of anti-Semitism. And I did see Chuck Schumer clap back at one Republican or person who's on the right, suggesting that Democrats are anti-Semitic. And Chuck Schumer, obviously, at the very top of power in the Democratic Party as far as the Senate is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, we have Chuck Schumer, who is an incredible leader in the United States Senate. Vice President Harris is married to Doug Emhoff, who has been a profoundly wonderful figure, who is also Jewish. I think it has nothing to do with that.
This is a word salad. Again, AOC, just answer the question.
Or a person who's on the right, suggesting that Democrats are anti-Semitic. And Chuck Schumer, obviously, at the very top of power in the Democratic Party as far as the Senate is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, we have Chuck Schumer, who is an incredible leader in the United States Senate. Vice President Harris is married to Doug Emhoff, who has been a profoundly wonderful figure, who is also Jewish. I think it has nothing to do with that. Vice President Harris had a very challenging, she had a challenge before in that we have so much talent in the Democratic Party, from Governor Shapiro to Governor Walz to many.
What talent? Hey, folks, let's have democracy in the chat. Does the Democratic Party have talent? Type 1 for yes, kid. It does. Your bias is showing, you awful man. I type 2. What talent? All these people do is talk, fill of hot air and false promises. I wonder how many 2s will be in the chat. I wonder.
Other people that she had to consider. I think that Governor Walz has many different assets that he brings to the table, and I trust her decision in making one that is best for not just the Democratic Party, but again, the entire country.
There is no mention of the war in Israel and Gaza right now. Do you think that was deliberate? Do you think that that should have been mentioned or come up in some way?
Well, I think that this is certainly an issue that's important to many Americans. They're going to want to ensure that we continue our efforts towards a ceasefire in the region. And I'm sure that this discussion will come up certainly between now and November.
Here's our campaign website. Let's refresh it one more time. Asking for money. $25, $47, $100, $250, $1,000. Okay. Now, look, this can be updated anytime, but I'm not seeing any policy. Take it away, AOC. What again?
But we also have a wide scope of issues as well that she has to address. And I think we saw a lot of that addressed last night, including when Governor Walz was addressing issues like IVF and choice, as well as many other issues that are at the top of people's minds right now.
I want to turn to Representative Cori Bush, who's part of that progressive wing known as the Squad. She lost her race yesterday, and so did Jamal Bowman here in New York. And both of them talked openly about their dissatisfaction with the war in Israel and Gaza against Hamas. What do you think that says about the squad and sort of the state of where you all are? Because you had so much support a few years ago. And sort of as Gail pointed out, there's this question about where that party stands, which seemed to have a lot of influence and power early on in the.
Oh yeah, notice AOC is going to give a word salad here. Corporate media, CBS. I'm gonna give you a hint. What happened to progressive movement? AOC and the squad and Bernie Sanders, that nutless wonder, destroyed the progressive movement. They abandoned their people. They compromised and fell in line with the Democratic machine. They got co-opted. They got taken over. They got slapped upside the head. They got reprogrammed. That's what happened to the progressive movement. Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, AOC, Bernie Sanders, and the rest of the quote-unquote progressives of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and anyone else that's progressive in the United States Senate were never who they said they were. And you think voters are going to be wasting your time, which is why, again, I say to progressives, don't let this hype around Kamala and Tim Walz distract you. Don't lose your ability to think critically. Because listen to AOC's answer.
Biden administration.
Well, first, I just want to speak to how courageously Representatives Bowman and Bush have served in Congress. And they spoke
stunning and brave.
Courageously on issues that are often very difficult to talk about in mainstream politics.
Right.
And I think that is one of the reasons why they have earned so much support, because they're willing to put their careers on the line to advocate for the issues that they think and viewpoints that they think are right. What I do think it means is that there is an enormous amount of influence of big money in politics. Cori Bush's race was the second most expensive primary in American history. Jamal Bowman's race was the most expensive primary in American history. And all of that money was spent against them.
And what happened? Why? Why was all this money spent? And where was the army? Where was the progressive movement? Where were the people that would fill in for stadiums to see AOC or Bernie or anyone else? I remember a time when an event was held, oh my goodness, tens of thousands, 20,000 people would attend. I'll never forget way back in the early days of the 2020 primary when Bernie Sanders came to Chicago at Navy Pier, and we covered that event. There was over 17,000, maybe around 20,000 people at that Bernie Sanders event alone. So many people showed up. So many people were there. That's a lot of people, and that is a lot. But I don't see Bernie doing that anymore. I don't see the crowds showing up anymore. It's because people were getting swindled. People got tricked. And that's what happened to the progressive movement. The failure of the leaders.
By a big money system of super PACs and difficult to trace political.
Well said, Kinkle, because she said she's not bringing up the word APAC. AOC. Who's doing it?
Contributions. That to me speaks to the corrupting role of our current campaign finance system and the fact that it is very hard to be a working class American that gets elected to office and stay in office. And to me, I think that those defeats speak to the more urgent need for us to continue to advocate on these issues. And I do continue to believe that they represent many of the views of many Americans as well.
Now, let's talk about Kamala Harris's policy, because yet again, Kamala doesn't have anything. This is again a video from C-SPAN where Kamala, what are we going to do about a ceasefire? What is your policy? What are we going to do?
Okay. Hi guys.
Policy platform. Policy is a key word.
Next week, and it'll be focused on the economy and what we need to do to bring down costs and also strengthen the economy overall.
Can you give us a sense reaction?
That's it for the economy right there. Hold on one more time. Now, she said next week, so here we are. Now, this video was posted August 10th.
Can you give us a sense reaction to the Israeli strike in Gaza today that killed at least 8
need to do to bring down costs and also strengthen the economy overall.
Can you give us a sense reaction to the Israeli strike in Gaza today that killed at least 80 people? That's the death.
You know, yet again, there are far too many civilians who've been killed. I mean, Israel has a right to go after the terrorists that are Hamas. But as I have said many, many times, they also have, I believe, an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties.
That's not an answer. Like, oh, we're so sorry all those people died. Israel has to avoid these casualties. Say that again, Kamala. It's like, oh, how sad.
At least 80 people. That's the death.
You know, yet again, there are far too many civilians who've been killed. I mean, Israel has a right to go after the terrorists that are Hamas. But as I have said many, many times, they also have, I believe, an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties.
You've been saying that since October 7th, and that has been the administration's policy for many, many months now. As tens of thousands of civilians have been killed, I mean, there are people who are asking for limitations on arms to Israel, any kind of change. What do you say to those folks who are looking for more than we should look out for civilians?
Well, look, first and foremost, and the president and I have been working on this around the clock, we need to get the hostages out. We need a hostage deal, and we need a ceasefire. And I can't stress that strongly enough. It needs to get done. The deal needs to get done, and it needs to get done now.
On economy, I know you're going to speak about that this coming week. Yeah. Can you give us a sense?
That's not an answer. That was never an answer. I just want to point this out again. You know, this has been a horrific attack that took place, especially at the school. Just hours before the bombing, the U.S. State Department announced that a $3.5 billion $3.5 billion of funds, part of a larger $14.1 billion in overseas military aid approved by Congress earlier this year, would be released to the Israeli government for weapons procurement, as if they don't have enough bombs already. As CNN reported, while some of those weapons purchases made possible by the fund may take years, the supplemental funding also allocated billions of dollars worth of equipment that Pentagon can draw from its own stockpiles and send directly to Israel on a much faster timeline. So that means all these bombs are on their way. So on Friday night, after the State Department announced, but before the news of the latest bombing in Gaza broke, Sarah Lee Whitson, executive director of the human rights and advocacy group Democracy for the Arab World Now, DAWN, was among those confounded by the U.S. government's continued determination to arm the Israelis in the face of the human suffering in Gaza and the repeated massacre of civilians day after day and months after months. Progressives, uncommitted. Do you get it now? Do you see it? I mean, I get why people are afraid of Trump. I get it, but don't let one person live rent-free in your head. You're continuously embarrassing yourselves.
Sense on what your view is on the Fed and independence of the Fed. President Trump weighed in on that list last week and said he thought he should have some say in the Fed's decisions.
I couldn't disagree, more strongly. The Fed is an independent entity, and as president, I would never interfere in the decisions that the Fed makes.
And what's your take on their policies right now? There was some concern last week as the market fell that there might be a recession coming. What's your view on that?
Well, as we know, there was some turbulence this week, but it seems to have settled itself, and we'll see what the decisions they make next. And I hear about them about the same time you do. Sure. Yeah.
Oh, God, does he always have to do that cringe laugh? So what can we take away from this? What can we learn from the absolute failure, the abysmal failure of the progressive movement? AOC, the squad, anyone associated with those people, they're leading progressives down a pathway to destruction. And so many progressives and independents, especially those of large platforms who have huge influence, are falling in line with the Kamala propaganda. And of course, you got AOC out there drumming the beat to vote for Kamala and we could fix things. AOC, she doesn't have a policy yet. And even then, when we look at these policies, I'm wondering, how sincere will they be? Don't worry, I'm not going to take too much faith into the Democrats for doing the right thing. It's impossible to think that the Democrats have what it takes to do the right thing, because they don't. All they know how to do is lie, mislead, and deceive people. And AOC has the audacity to sit before the American people, the press, and say, well, she's doing this and she's doing that. What she was giving was a word salad. Kamala Harris giving a word salad. It's what these politicians are good at. They talk and talk and talk, but they deliver nothing. But yet when it comes down to bailing out Wall Street and the big banks and corporations and helping out other foreign governments, hey, they're quick to give a single concise answer, and that's that. But as for standing up and trying to stop a genocide that's happening in Gaza, yeah, they're not going to get off their feet. They're going to sit down and watch and say, shake their heads and say, geez, that's a shame. So if you are going to be a progressive, if you're going to especially even go to that DNC convention or is it at that sideline event that I spoke about earlier in a different segment, if you like being played along, being a sucker, just give me your wallet. I'll hold on to it for you so you don't make the financial disaster of donating to the Democratic Party. If you're ever wondering why you're getting text messages and emails from the DNC and you have made it very clear that you're not going to vote Democrat or Republican, just thank Bernie Sanders. So if you donated to the Bernie Sanders campaign, he gave away all our emails and phone numbers. That's why you're constantly getting bombarded by the Democrats, because the progressives sold us out. AOC did, Bernie Sanders did, they all did. Wake up. If you think they're going to come to your rescue, you are not paying attention and uncommitted. If you think AOC or Kamala are going to do something to stop the crisis in Gaza, you are not paying attention and you're not listening to their word salad. They've told you nothing. They're speaking. You could hear words, you could hear sounds, but it's nothing, a nothing burger. And I'm so sorry.